There's a little debate going on in the AI space right now, which is a long context versus RAG. Which one wins? I think that question doesn't really make sense. It's like asking what's better, a filing cabinet or the ability to be able to read. I think they just do completely different jobs, different purposes. And once you understand what RAG actually is, you're gonna realize you've been using it every single day without knowing, if you fall into the category of a power user. About a year ago, I helped sell a promise I couldn't fully deliver. It just made me super sick of it, so I quit. And I decided if I say it, I will deliver it. If I cannot, I'll tell you early and I fix it how. Now I just show you how to build it yourself for completely free. Here's what this video is going to do for you. By the end, you will understand every major piece of the RAG landscape, not just the jargon itself, the actual concept, when you need RAG, when you don't, what all the acronyms actually mean and how they connect to each other. And then I'm going to show you how to build a real RAG agent for your company. It costs almost nothing compared to what you're getting to build. And once it's up and running, the ongoing cost will be $0. So more on that later. So we're basically going from what is this to I built this in a single video. But first, I need to give you a little bit of a mental note. One picture that'll make everything in this video click. As you already know, I like analogies. That's helped me understand. Okay, so think of your company's knowledge base like a library. Your documents, your SOPs, your client files, your emails, your spreadsheets, all of that, even the code repositories, etc. All of that is just a library. Some libraries are small, some of them are big, a single bookshelf, some of them are really massive, right? Thousands of shelves, multiple floor, restricted sections. The question every AI system has to answer is, how do you help someone find the right page in the right book on the right shelf fast? Hold that picture for a second, because everything I'm about to explain maps back to this library. Let me show you something that you are probably doing every week. You open ChatGPT or Claude, whatever LLM that you're using, or even Notebook LLM. You upload a bunch of files, maybe 20 PDFs, maybe 50, or even 100 plus, and you ask a question, and the AI gives you an answer pulled from your documents. Here's what most people assuming is happening is that AI reads all 50 documents, thinks about your questions and gives you an answer based on that. Reasonable assumption, but here's what is actually happening in the background. The moment you upload those files into the system chops them into small pieces. It converts those pieces into math, that basically a set of coordinates like 0.7, minus 0.7, things like that, that represent what each piece means. It stores all those coordinates in a hidden index, which is an invisible card catalog. Then when you ask a question, it does not read all 50 documents. It searches the card catalog first. It finds the pieces that are most likely related to your question, and it only reads those pieces before giving you that answer. That search system, that is RAG, and we call it Retrieval Augmented Generation. Let that land for a second, because every time you've uploaded documents to one of these tools and ask a question or two, you were using RAG. You just did not know it had a name on it, right? So your AI retrieves the relevant pieces first, then generates an answer from them. Retrieve, then generate, that is RAG. Retrieve, then generate, RAG. Notebook LLM does this. It is openly built on RAG, primarily. When it gives you those little citations that point back to your sources, that is retrieval system at work. ChatGPT projects does this, Claude projects does this, Google's Gemini Gems does this. There's no magic in this. They're just really polished versions of a library with a built-in librarian. You bring the books, they organize the shelves, build a card catalog, and search it for you behind the scenes. The difference between those tools and what I'm going to show you later is simple. With those tools, you do not get to see how the library is organized. You cannot control the librarian. You cannot decide which shelves exist or who is even allowed to access them, right? And worse yet, your data is not being protected. That matters for a lot of people, because if the built-in librarian misses something or pulls the wrong pages, you just have no way to fix this. You just get a worse answer and you do not even know why it's doing that. But when you build your own, you control everything. Now that you know what RAG is, I'm going to explain the other side of this debate, which we call it a long context. Let's go back to the library for a second. Imagine someone asks you a question about your company. You have two choices. Choice one, you grab every book in the library, stack them all on a giant desk, and read through everything looking for the answer. That is long context. The AI loads everything into its memory and tries to reason across all of it at once. And choice number two, you have a librarian. The librarian searches the shelves, pulls in 3 most relevant books from there, opens them to the right pages, and hands you just those pages on a silver platter. Then you read just those pages and give the answer. That is RAG. So this whole debate, which one is better, which one is not. I think it depends on how big your library is. If your library is just one bookshelf, maybe 10 to 20 documents, stacking them all on the desk and reading through them works great. Actually, it might work better than a librarian because the librarian could potentially accidentally skip a book that really matters. You can see everything at once, notice connections between documents, and nothing really falls through the cracks there. But if your library is 10, 20 floors with 1,000 shelves, you cannot possibly stack all on one desk. Even if you could, you would miss things. As you already know, when AI models get too much text in a single chat window, they start losing track of information buried in the middle, and we call that a loss in the middle. The longer the input, the worse this gets. Context is just lost somewhere, right? So I guess it's safe to say they're not exactly competing each other. They're doing different jobs. RAG is a knowledge selection system. Its job is literally to what should the AI even see? And on the other hand, the long context is a reasoning tool. Its job is simply to, now that it sees the right stuff, how deeply can it think about it? 2026 and beyond, the best system is the one that uses both systems, hybrid method. So the librarian finds the right books, opens them to the right pages, and then you sit down at a big desk with those pages open and think deeply about the answer. So for this, you just retrieve much narrowly and reason deeply. That's the pattern here. Now the real practical question here is, when does your company actually need to build RAG? And when is it overkill? You need RAG when at least one of these questions are true. One, your library is just too big. If your documents just do not fit in the AI's memory, you need a librarian to narrow things down. We're talking like hundreds or thousands of documents, not 1,000. We're talking terabytes, even petabytes of documents here. Two, your books change often. If your data updates daily, weekly, or even in real time, you need a system that can search the current version. Long context means reloading everything every time something changes. RAG means updating one shelf and the card catalog stays current. Three, not everyone should see every book. If different employees or clients have different access rights, permissions, you need a librarian that checks badges before pulling books from restricted shelves. Long context just dump everything on the desk. There's no access control there. Four, you need to prove where answer came from. Someone asks, where did you get that? RAG gives you that citation back to exact passage, the receipts, invoices, and much more. Okay, then when is RAG overkill? You might have probably guessed it, right? When your library is just too small, stable, and everyone has the same access. Say for example, like if your company have 10 to 15 SOPs that rarely change and you just want to chat with them, just paste them into Cloud Projects or ChatGPT. There's no need to, you don't need that kind of an infrastructure needed for this one. You can keep it simple. Now, let's talk about the cost here. Long context is very cheap to start, but it gets really expensive at scale. Because every time you ask a question, the AI just rereads it, all the documents, and you pay for every word it processes. RAG is, of course, expensive to set up, but cheap at scale. But you build a card catalog once, and every question after that only costs you the small setup pages the librarian pulls. For most companies with real massive amount of data, RAG wins on cost after just a few conversations back and forth. Okay, so now you know what RAG is, you know when you need it. That was the easy part. Here's where most people's head explode, and I think you feel the same way I do. Every week there's a new acronym, a new tool, new features, a new this replaces that, this replaces RAG claim, graph RAG, CAG, KV cache, vector databases. It sounds like a freaking foreign languages for some people, and I'm gonna kill that confusion right now. Every single one of these maps back to our library. There's no jargon, just the picture you already have. So imagine this. Let me start with the biggest myth here. Most people think RAG equals vector databases. They think you need some fancy, expensive tool like Pinecone or VBA to make RAG work. Some agency probably told you that. RAG does not need a vector database. What RAG needs is retrieval. That's it. It needs a way to search your library. And using vector databases is just one method of retrieving it. A vector database is one type of card catalog. It works by converting text into mass coordinates and finding what is nearby and meaning. That is what we call a semantic search. Say for example, you ask, how do we handle angry customer? And it's gonna find that documents about complaint resolution, even if those exact words never appear in the questions. That is genuinely useful, but it is not the only way to rummage through your library. BM25 finds documents by matching exact words. When you ask for, hey, find me a serial number or invoice number X4782MVYZW, and it finds exactly that. Vector search, on the other hand, will struggle here because it deals in meaning instead of a search keyword term. Not exact matches, but keyword search will nail it here. SQL queries against a normal database. If your data is structured, rows and columns, the librarian just runs a database query there. No vector database is needed. This is how most company data is already working. Now there is graph queries. If your data is about relationships, who is connected to what, graph search follows those connections. I'm going to talk about more on this later. Even your company wiki's built-in search can serve as a retrieval layer for RAG. The point here is the card catalog can be simple or very complex. What matters is that it finds the right books. A well-organized set of label shelves with a basic index beats a fancy system that just nobody configure properly. If you can take one thing from this section is do not let somebody sell you a vector database before you have tried keyword search first. BM25 is free. It's battle tested, and for a lot of company data, especially anything with product codes, names, or specific terms, it just outperforms a vector search. It has to. So start simple, you can add complexity only when simple fails. Now you might hear the term in-memory vector database. Let's briefly talk about this. It just means the card catalog lives in the computer's short-term memory instead of being saved to your disk. It's much faster, it's great for prototyping and small projects, but it's temporary. If the computer restarts, the catalog will disappear. Let's think of it as a sticky note index the librarian makes for one project and throws away after, not a permanent system. Now, let me walk you through the acronyms that make this space feel way more complicated than it already is. I'm going to explain each one in 30 seconds or less using the library analogy and tell you when it actually matters for your business here. First one is CAG, Context Augmented Generation, instead of RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. This one is Context Then Generate. This term gets thrown around a bit here, and I think it means different things depending on who is saying it. Here's a simple way to think about it. When you walk into the library, the librarian already knows who you are. Before you even ask a question there, they put your employee handbook, your client file, and your recent project notes on your desk. They just preloaded your contacts. They did not search for anything. They just know you. They just know you that you always need those things. They treat you like a regular. That is what we call CAG, pre-packaging known contacts before the AI even starts thinking about it. Now, RAG searches for unknown answers. CAG preloads known contacts. So are they competing each other? What should I use? Well, most good systems, I think, do both at the same time. And honestly, if you've ever set up a system prompt with background information, you've already done CAG without even you noticing it. So when you want more personalization, session state, or consistent roles injected into every conversation automatically, this is when you need CAG. Are you still with me? We got a few more. The second one is KV, Key Value Cache. Imagine the librarian reads a 300-page book to answer your first question. Then you ask again, question about the same book. Does the librarian read all 300 pages? No, they memorize the important parts from the first read. So the second question is just way faster and cheaper. That is what we call KV cache. The AI saves its mental math from text it already processed. So it does not redo it on the next question. It does not change what the AI can do. It just makes repeat work faster and cheaper. So when you're asking many questions about the same set of documents, like chatting with contract or working through a long report, this is what you need. Now there is this, recursive language models, RLMs. Remember how long context means stacking every book on the desk? What if the desk is just too small for all the books to be stacking up on that desk? And there's one option you can do. You can hire a team of research assistants. Each one takes a different section of the library, reads their sections, writes a summary, and brings it back. Then someone reads all the summaries and writes the final answer and give it to you. That is an RLM. Instead of cramming everything into one giant prompt, the AI sends out smaller versions of itself to read different parts of the data, report back, and then it combines the findings. It is still mostly a research pattern, but it is converging with the Agentic RAG approach I'll show you later, where the AI acts like a team of researchers instead of one person trying to read everything alone. But it is not an Agentic framework, it is a strategy. So if you have extremely large data sets that just do not fit in any context window and need a multi-pass analysis, this is what you need. But this is not something most small businesses need today, but I think it's worth knowing exists. Now there is conversational memory. You walk into the library on Monday and work on a project with the librarian. You come back Wednesday. Does the librarian remember what you were working on? That is conversational memory. And there are two types. Type 1 is the librarian literally recorded everything you said on Monday and replaced the whole tape on Wednesday. Totally works fine, but it gets expensive. Long recording eats up that space really fast, and eventually the tape runs out and they just forget the entire early stuff, right? So that is called the episodic memory here, raw chat history. And there's type 2. The librarian wrote a short note after a Monday session. Layla is working on project Area 51, needs Q3 financial report, and on Wednesday they just read the notes they have to contact. Nothing's forgotten. That is what we call the semantic memory. Episodic memory, semantic memory, which is extracted facts stored in a database. Claude, ChatGPT, and others are moving towards semantic memory right now, and that is why Claude sometimes remembers things about you across conversation. I think Claude does better jobs in terms of everything nowadays. But however, there's a trade-off and really important caveat that I have to talk about, which is that you have to keep conversation memory separate from company knowledge retrieval, which means the librarian's notes about you are not exactly the same as the books on the shelves, right? So one is just who is the user, the other is what is true. So if you mix them up and the AI starts confusing your personal preferences with company policy, and you do not want that. I know I just threw 4 acronyms at you. Here's a practical takeaway so you're not just collecting vocabularies here. If you're building or buying an AI system for your company, you can ask 3 questions to yourself. Does it preload my context automatically? That is CAG, which is a good sign. Does it cache repeated work so I'm not paying twice for the same document over and over? That is KV cache, which is also good. Does it remember what I was working on last time? That is conversational memory, useful for ongoing project. 3 concepts, 3 yes or no questions. That is all you need from this section. RLMs are the 4 concepts I cover, and unless you're dealing with like truly massive data sets, you probably will not encounter it yet. But someone pitches it to you, now you kind of know what this means, right? Now, a concept that is genuinely different and worth understanding. Normal RAG is like a librarian searching for specific books. You ask a question, they find the most relevant pages, which is great for specific answers. But what if your question is just not specific at all? What if you ask like, what are the common things that appear over and over across all our CRM, customer complaints, etc. this quarter? Or how does this supplier's problem will affect us in any ways, etc. That is not a find the right page question. That is more of a see the big picture questions, right? Graph RAG builds a map during setup. It reads through your entire library and creates a web of connections, people, companies, topics, events, and how they all relate to each other. And when you ask a big picture question, it's not gonna just search the individual pages. It will walk on the map, find clusters of related things, and come up with an overview. You can think of it as the difference between a librarian who can find a specific book and a librarian who is read everything and can tell you the themes. When you have very entity-rich data, legal search, intelligence teams, risk analysis, that's when you need this graph RAG for. But if all you need is just simple FAQ or single document lookup, small corpus, if your library is just one bookshelf, you do not need this relationship map. There's this thing called lazy graph RAG, which was developed by Microsoft. If you're interested in it, you can look that up. One more thing before we move on. Everything I've described here so far assumes your library contains text. Only text, words on pages. But what if your library has blueprints, photographs, images, audio recordings, slide decks, code repositories, videos? That is where RAG gets significantly harder. Each type of content needs its own way of being searched, right? So you cannot really search a photograph the same way you search a paragraph. Each modality needs its own processing, its own index, and they all need to be linked together. I want to be fully transparent and honest with you. If your company's data is just heavily multimodal, the engineering effort will jump to probably 5 to 10 times compared to text-only PDF voices RAG. I don't think it's a weekend project. Even I don't know how. I haven't done it yet, because I'm telling you this because nobody else you will. Most tutorials will pretend like this complexity does not exist, right? So if your data is mostly text with some PDFs, you're fine. The system I'm going to build for you handles that. If you're dealing with video archives and scanned blueprints, that is a different conversation and a much bigger build, because you would have to transcribe everything into Word. before we build anything, I need to show you the thing that separates every RAG demo you've seen online from something a real company can actually trust. It comes down to one simple question: who is allowed to see what? Start with the access. In a real company, not every employee should see every document. HR files, financial records, client-specific data. A real RAG system checks batches, right? So before the librarian pulls anything off the shelf, they verify that the specific user is even allowed to see it, right? There are two common patterns here, which is the pre-filtering. Every book in the library is tagged with who is allowed to read it. The search only looks at books you are cleared for. And there's post-filtering, which is the librarian is responsible for that. So librarian grabs a bunch of books, then checks your batch before handing them over. Either works, but pre-filtering is usually cleaner. Here's most people do not realize is that if your company is already using database like Postgres with row-level security built in, you can add a vector extension like PG Vector and you get RAG with permissions baked in. There's no fancy new tools required. Don't make it too complicated as it already is. Now, there is control exposure. Access, the permission is about who can search what. Exposure is about what the AI itself gets to see. With long context, the AI just sees everything you feed it, right? So if you dump your entire company drive into the prompt, which I don't think is gonna fit, a clever prompt injection attack could trick the AI into revealing something it should not. But with RAG, the AI only get to see what librarian hands you over. So smaller exposure surface, which means more robust security, the AI cannot leak what it never sees. Neither approach is perfectly safe unless you use local open source models, I think. But RAG gives you a much tighter control surface. Then there's control quality. This is what I call the echo chamber problem. Even with the right access and minimal exposure, one more problem that we need to think about. When you ask a question, and if that same question always return the exact same pages from your library, like very deterministic behavior, you develop blind spots there. So the librarian keeps going to the same shelf every time and just ignores other shelves that might have a better answer, right? It's just being lazy. In this case, you gotta have your librarian search multiple ways, right? You gotta rewrite the question in different words and search again. Use both keyword search and meaning search and combine results. What you want eventually is diversity, not a randomness though. So the librarian should try different approaches, but always write down what they did and why. Log them so you can debug if something goes wrong. So access, exposure, quality, that's the chain here. Get those three right and you will have something a real company can trust. Okay, now you understand the full landscape here. You know what RAG is, you know what it is not, you know when you need it, what all the acronyms actually mean. I'm pretty sure there's more, but I might have missed some, and how they all connect back to one picture, a library with a librarian. This entire video wouldn't make sense if I do not show how you can build one for yourself, one for your company, right? So we're gonna build this together, a real agentic RAG system for a company. We're gonna use a frontier model to build it first, which will cost less than $1 of a subscription you probably already have. But once it is built, it runs on local open source models. There will be no API cost, no subscriptions, zero ongoing cost to run it. But first, what does agentic actually mean? Because there's a big difference between basic RAG system and an agentic one, and it really matters. Let's go back to the library one more time here. This will be quick because you already have the full picture here. So basic RAG is like a junior librarian, maybe part-time, who got hired a couple of weeks ago. You ask a question, they search, pull results, hand them to you, one pass, that's it, done. Agentic RAG, on the other hand, is like a senior librarian with years of experience. They think before they search. They break vague questions into smaller ones. They search, they check if the results are good enough, rewrite the search if it's not, maybe check a database for the numbers, cross-reference here and there, then answer. RAG with a brain, like a human. So if you have data sets across multiple systems, and if you want accuracy over speed, then this is probably what you want. And when it is overkill, same, simple FAQ. If you want just direct lookups, you do not need to build a senior librarian when a junior one will do better jobs at low cost. You're about to see the difference live here. Let me show you. Now the senior librarian needs to access multiple branches of your library. The documents live in one place. The database lives in another. The ticketing system is somewhere else. How does librarian get into all of those? That is where MCP comes in. You probably heard of it. Model Context Protocol. MCP is not a framework. It's not a retriever. It is not an agent. MCP is a universal library card system. Your company has multiple branches. Let's think of it like that. A document archive, a database, a ticketing system, a CRM. Normally the librarian would probably need a different key card, right? A different login, authentication information, and different process to access each and every single one of them. MCP, on the other hand, gives the librarian one universal card that works at every branch. One protocol, every door. The librarian still does the thinking here. MCP just makes sure every door opens the same exact way. And in the system we're about to build, MCP is how the agent accesses different data sources through a single clean interface here. It is not doing the thinking. It is making the connections just simpler. Alright, here's the build. Everything I'm about to use to run this system is free. Open source, runs locally on your machine, no data leaves your computer, no monthly bills, but electricity bill is yours. The build itself uses Codex, Frontier Agentic coding model to help set it up that costs less than $1 from a subscription you likely already have. But once it is built and up and running, it is powered entirely by local open source model. So that is where the ongoing cost will drop to $0 except the electricity bill. So I'm going to walk you through this step by step. If you want to follow along, the full repo with all the config file is linked in the description. You do not need to code from scratch. You can clone it and be running in minutes. It'll be an interactive experience for you. So here's what we're building here. A RAG agent that can search your company documents, answer questions from them, cite where it found the answers, and run entirely on your own machine. Let's get this going. So I was just curious to see like how other LLM would rate my repo. So I just did a little test here to see what it would rate me out of. So I'll drop a repo where business owner can just follow interactive guide to build their own RAG. I want you to rate the repo on a scale of 1 to 10 and tell me why were the gaps that'll make the repo 10 if not already. So I dropped my repo link here. And also said be rigorous and thorough. I guess this is like one of my favorite magic words that I always use, right? And I got 8 out of 10. That's not bad. And we'll try to make it 10 since this is not exactly this is a very lightweight agentic RAG. I'll make that. In order for me to get to middleweight agentic RAG, I should at least get to 10 so I can jump onto the next level, right? Okay, enough chit-chatting. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Codex since this is the coding AI assistant that I'm going to be using today. I've already made my working directory folder here and I'm going to start chatting with it. Now I'm in the right place. Full access, GPT 5.4, extra high, and I also turned the fast mode, which is the it increased the inference speed by 2x, but the rate of the tokens that I'm consuming right now is quite a lot, you know, compared to the normal one. Anyway, this is my repo. Let's start with this, pull everything and go from there. I'm tracking the current workspace state first, so we can pull this repo in without templating anything local. Then I'll fetch the GitHub project and I'll wire up here. This current working directory folder is not in a Git repo, so I'm cloning directly into the workspace rather than nesting another directory inside it. Now it's gonna do a bunch of things here, right? So the amazing thing about this agentic coding assistants are they just do things for you when you know what you're doing and give them full access to your local environment. They just do things for you. This amazes me just every single time. All right, I'm gonna come back when this is all done, okay? Well, by the way, it's still installing right now, but then if you don't have Llama models installed here and the Llama as well, you gotta install it or have the coding assistant have it installed for you. So it gets easier. Like I said, the setup is only done with the Frontier model first, and after that, it'll be run with the Llama Quen 3.5, 8 billion parameters. You can do less parameters models if you want. Since we're using RAG, it'll be much easier for our device to not dying. Yeah, third repo is fully pulled into this workspace and working. A few concrete next build. Run the stream web, run the web app. Point it at your real document and re-ingest. Start modifying the retrieval agent's log user. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna treat this as if I'm literally one of you guys. I'm gonna pretend like I'm doing this for the first time. I have literally no knowledge of whatsoever. That's my current state, and let's do it. Okay, what would be the first step I should take here? Okay, since this is what I have, I'm gonna copy. Since it says run, turn on your calendar and hit enter. Yep, I ran into an error, it looks like. What I'm gonna do is just copy and paste the entire error and drop it in there. Okay, now the port is open, the error is fixed. By the way, some people might be asking, why don't you show the whole entire processes end to end, how I built this? I could absolutely show you the entire process, but do you actually want to go through the entire process? That's the question, because I mean, you are business owners. Don't you want to just get the benefit from it? That's why I just jumped right into it. And besides, if you want the actual logic that I built on this, around this repo, you can just copy the entire repo. That's why it's public, right? So copy the repo, ask the AI what's the logic behind it, things like that, right? So it'll be much easier for you. Instead of uploading tutorials that is longer than 2 to 3 hours, it just doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, people will find it much easier to reverse engineer and debug, or to add more logic and refine logic behind it when they see the end project first and then work on it. Okay, anyway, back to this. I'm gonna click on this one. All right, perfect. Now this is the UI. It's very simple. Here on the left side, I'm just gonna quickly explain. This is the runtime shell, local only. It's not publicly accessible, of course, because it's local. Okay, now what we're going to do here, we're going to choose a folder that all your knowledge, your PDFs, invoices are in, and I have already prepared for mine as well. Let's see. Choose folder. When you click on this one, it's gonna give you this pop-up, and go to, yeah, I was already in the download. Here, where is it? Yep, this invoices folder. To briefly explain, these are all the different kinds of invoices with different names, different customer client number, different product information, different total amounts, different dates, and as well as I have two different actually four different folders, which are all restricted, marked as restricted. And I think it's best for me to just show you, right? I think that's better. Invoices. So let me show you the invoice number 1. It looks like this one. Okay, DOOing Studio and build to James Butler. There is a project, payment terms, invoice number, product and services, quantity, and the total amount. There's a note, payment instructions, right? And all this are different for every single invoices, right? As you can see. I'm going to explain what these folders are for. So these 4 folders are all contains all restricted confidential information of a person. So for Sophia here, I have a confidential employee history report, which I will demonstrate in the demo. So there are recorded events. Here, as you can see, she had to leave the company due to family emergency and caregiving obligations. And that's for Sophia. Let's do Elena Park. This is a contract, employment contract. Now there's an employee ID, client number. This shouldn't be here, but anyway, I made this with AI, guys. This is not real. Don't believe it. Okay, the base salary, 12% annual target. These are supposed to be all confidential. Only should be available to either owner or C-suite level executives, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you why I made these 4 folders and all the invoices here. Total, I have 149. Is it correct? Yes, 149-ish. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to our web app here. Let's go choose app, click on invoices, the folder is chosen, click upload, and it's gonna give me the pop-up, upload 154 files to this site. Yes, that is correct. Upload, and within a second, it'll give me, let's see how long it's gonna take. Okay, awesome. That was 8 seconds, I think. Now, it chunks the entire documents into 169 chunks, and there are 4 restricted files, 149 public, which is correct. I marked those 4 files as confidential or restricted or something sensitive. That's how I marked it, and as you can see, AI picked it up good, right? So upon uploading this, you will have a preset based on what you uploaded here. So here I have pricing term. What does DOOing Studio invoice number 2026-001 say about pricing, discount, and trial terms? Number 2, 3, 4, like this. Pretty typical. But then what I want to do here is I'm going to demonstrate with you. Here on the left side, let me just explain real quick. Here you can choose your local models. Model setting. Now don't touch this. Chat model, I can use Qwen 3.8b or Qwen 3.9b. Honestly, as I'm recording this, if I was to just use this model, Qwen 3.59 billion parameters model, as I'm recording this all at the same time, my laptop was probably gonna explode. But then, since I'm using RAG approach to chunk the documents down, and now it's less burden for the device, so it's not gonna make any sound. I'm pretty sure. So anyway, I'm gonna use the 3.59b, the latest one. If you like, you can go with the biggest model that is available, but the preset I have so far is this one. And for the embedding model, do not just touch anything. Does not make embed text latest, just leave it be. And access view, I'll explain this later. Okay, for now, this is good. What I'm gonna do here is just to show you if this is working fine. I'm gonna go to my Finder, and I'm just gonna pick any random number, 34. Okay, the name is Amelia Foster. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this name, drop here. How much, what's the total amount billed to Amelia Foster? And issue date, this, go back. And also, let's make it fun. Support retainer. What was the quantity of support retainer she got? And let's see. Ask how long will it take? Okay, it took me 25 seconds. So my question was, what's the total amount billed to Amelia Foster? And I gave the issue date, and as well as I asked the quantity of support retainer that she got in the product list. And it said, the total amount billed to Amelia Foster on the invoice dated May 28, 2026, invoice number, and $3,738. Let's see. And the quantity of support retainer she received on the specific invoice was 4 units. Why don't we check? $3,738, correct. And the support retainer was also correct. Awesome. Unit price of this landing page copy package. I do not know if this is the only product that is listed in this invoice, or is there any other? Or there could be same products listed in the other invoices as well. But let's see how this is going to turn out. What is the unit price of package? Moment of truth. My laptop is kind of heating up right now because I'm running OBS, this coding model at the same time is taking up a lot of my RAM. Okay, so let's see. As I suspected, there are different unit prices for different invoices. Let's see, what was ours? 374, an invoice number. Where's the invoice number? Yep. 00. Yep, here we go. 374 according to invoice 0034 PDF. Yep. Nice. Now the next one, what I want to do is I'm gonna see if this is also doable. I told you about this 4 confidential documents, right? So let's start with this Sophia work history. Okay, Sophia Bennett. I'm just gonna copy her name here. Oh, come on. Yep. Go back. Sophia Bennett came back to me for a job. I don't know why she left in the first place. Can you pull her records? Why did she leave? All right, let's see. Now, I got restricted. The reason why is I'm not supposed to be looking at this because I don't have the permission, which means the permission was not on. Let's see. Access view, go custom. I'm gonna let this AI system know that I'm the owner. And once I do this, when I ask questions, I just wanted to demonstrate you guys that the restricted docs, the 4 restricted folders, documents, are not accessible by anyone other than owner, right? Okay, and the same exact question I'm gonna ask again. It got abstained. The model found related material but withheld a definitive answer because grounding was insufficient. Okay, this basically means it just didn't decide properly. All right, see. Now on the right side, there's an inspector. Since there was no answer, there was no citation. And now there is chunks, confidential employees history. There we go, Sophia Bennett. Yep, we can read this. She stepped away temporarily due to a documented family emergency and later returned after resolving the leave circumstances. Performance record notes exceeded annual retention targets in 4 consecutive review cycles. That means she's hired. She's rehired, right? Now I'm gonna do another person, which is a Elena. Let's do Caleb Mercer. What do you have here? Okay. Caleb, confidential employments. Okay, as you can see, Caleb Mercer, an employment timeline. Yep, there's a noted escalation in bullying complaint. Separation completed after workplace conduct investigation and retention impact review. Okay, so I'm gonna copy his name. I'll probably ask similar questions, which is Caleb Mercer came back for a job offer. Not sure if he is character to hire back. Let's see. Now I have the owner's badge mark turned on here and from the access view custom owners. That's why I'm able to view this confidential restricted documents, right? And we'll see. Okay, the result came back. It took 16 seconds. Now let's take a look. Caleb Mercer is not recommended for rehire without executive review. His employee history indicates repeated involvement in workspace gossip, interpersonal hostility, and conduct that contributed to a degraded team environment. That's pretty good. Yeah, he's definitely not getting his job back, right? And there's citation. You can see where it was from. Yep. Here also, it even gives you the line, right? The chunks here when you click on it. And when you click on the trace, you can kind of see this vector math coordinates number. Let's have a look. Yep, there's this one, rank 2. There's this one, right? Yeah, pretty good. Okay, now one more thing I want to do is I'm going to turn this off. I'm not an owner anymore. And see, there was a Elena Park. What do you have? I'm sure this was a contract information if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, okay, so let's see. I'm gonna ask her SIN number. What is Elena Park's SIN number? I forgot. And ask. Yay, look at this. Restricted. Your current access view cannot use one or more matching documents. Try custom and enable owners. Yep, it's working exactly as I suspected. What if I turn this on and ask again? Okay, result came back, took 18 seconds. Elena Park's SIN number is 364812905. Let's take a look. 364812905. Let's go back. Citation, there. Chunks, yep. Confidential employee, awesome. Alright, awesome. The device that I'm currently using is M2 Mac Pro, and it's running fine, but it's taking around averaging 10 to 16 seconds to get the answer. So if you have a better device, obviously that's gonna cut down to probably so much faster. And even right now I'm recording, so that takes off my RAM as well. So it's a little hard on my machine. That's why it's taking longer than usual. If I was just to be running this all alone without any other apps open, then it would have been much faster. My TPS would have been much. Docs are indexed locally with a Llama open source model, and embeddings are generated locally as well. A retrieval, which happens locally, the answer is generated locally by a Llama. So I wouldn't say it's fully 100% protected, because you still have risk of somebody trying to access your device, local files, cache, or Llama logs, you know? So it's not automatically protected, but the local privacy setup, this will give you a bit of a peace of mind than using frontier models to upload your SIN numbers, sensitive documents, you know, better than that. So you have to kind of be aware that later on you decided to kind of refine the logic and trying to move forward a bit more and trying to enable the bridging part with Frontier Models API. Now that data leaves outside of your machine during ingest, you gotta be careful with that. Okay, my repo is public. I'll probably update this to maybe middleweight agentic RAG in the near future, but because at the moment it's a lightweight agentic RAG, because it only uses one retrieval method at the moment, which is a vector databases. If this was to be considered middle to maybe high agentic RAG, then it would have to use at least more than 3 retrieval methods, and the agent should be able to determine what retrieving method is the best fit when generating a response based on your questions. And that is now a working agentic RAG system running locally, powered by open source models Qwen 3.5 model. Zero ongoing costs, your data never leaves your machine. Let me be real with you here. This is not exactly a finished product. This is a starting point. For a small business with mostly text documents and straightforward questions, this will just do it fine. If you need enterprise-grade permissions, multi-modal search across videos and images, or even real-time data from 5 different systems, you're going to need a bigger build, which I want to do it one day. But this is the foundation, and most companies do not need more than this to get real value from their own data. So if you have less than maybe 100 gigabytes of PDFs or documents, then this could be your foundation. So let me bring this full circle here. You started this video thinking RAG was some kind of a complex engineering thing that only technical teams deal with. Now you know that every time you upload files to ChatGPT, Claude, Notebook LM, and Gemini and ask a question, you're using RAG. You thought RAG needed expensive vector database and complicated infrastructure. Now you know that is not exactly true. It just needs retrieval, a search, keyword search works, SQL works. Your existing tools might already be enough. And you just saw me build a working RAG agent for a company, less than $1 to build, 0 ongoing cost to run. So if this clarifies even one thing about RAG for you, why don't you drop a comment and tell me which part kind of clicked for you, okay? Because it helps me know what to go deeper on next. And as promised, full repository with config files are linked in the description. Join my newsletter and you'll get it for free. You can just clone it and have this running today depending on your size of your database.